Do you think you have privilege? Do you think you have privilege? Do you think you have Do you think you have privilege over me? That's a smart move. You crazy.
Well said, Warren. Hey, what's up, guys? And girls. They watch too sometimes. If you don't know by now, Warren T. Smithington is one of the smartest people on the planet. If I'm not mistaken, he actually invented logic, or at least it seems that way given how many times he uses the word.
Logical, logically, logic.
Well, Warren has gifted us another video where he provides a superficial off-the-cuff analysis coupled with his signature awkward as hell editing. Also, what's up with the microphone, dude? My man thinks he's hosting The Price is Right.
Welcome to The Price is Right.
In this video, Warren takes another stab at understanding racism, which is hard, I get it, by watching a pretty heated conversation between a student and some guy I've never heard of at a Young Americans for Freedom event. But before I play it, I want to point out two broad issues that I have with this video. One is the conversation itself between the student and the speaker. As you'll see, it's not really a productive conversation. The person asking questions is clearly nervous to be speaking in public, but she's trying her best to articulate her position that white privilege is a thing that exists today and historically, and has consequences for people in the present. And the guy speaking, a dude named Vince Ellison, berates the student, calling her crazy and insane. His responses to her points are also just kind of silly, but we'll get into that later. But apparently this exchange was a good example of logic and reason according to Warren.
This is a good debate.
Sure it is, bud. And of course, the other thing I found lacking was Warren's analysis of this exchange. He just kind of interjects every 3 seconds and says basically nothing, and if he does say something substantive, it's usually wrong. Alright, let's get into it.
Do you think you have privilege over me?
Calling out sounds to be a white student. We already know probably where she's going to go with her strategy. He's asking her point blank. Do you think you have privilege over me?
I've asked you very simply to show me the white person that has privilege over me. Nobody stood up. Do you think you have privilege over me?
Yes.
Give her the benefit of the doubt. She's trying to acknowledge, with being a white person, because of your skin color, you are privileged over another person. Well, obviously, inherently, that is racist.
Do you think you have privilege over me?
Yes.
You're crazy. You're insane.
Okay, so Warren says he'll give her the benefit of the doubt and then immediately calls her racist. I was expecting him to steelman her argument, but he passes up the opportunity to do so here. And exactly how is that inherently racist? Warren simply tells us it's obvious. But that's not really a good logical argument. Acknowledging your privilege over a group that faces discrimination does not equate to racism. I mean, if someone in the 1960s said, I'm white, and because of that I'm given certain advantages that black and brown people aren't given, and I would like to correct for that, your first thought probably wouldn't be, that person is racist. It would be true today as well. But this is what conservatives do all the time. If you point out that some groups are privileged over others as a function of systems and not necessarily individual actions, then that's racist. But when someone like, Ben Shapiro, who I'm only assuming Warren likes, says that racial inequality is actually because of gangster rap, well, them's just the facts, bucko, and facts can't be racist.
You have no privilege over me. Let's make this absolutely positively clear. You have no privilege over me, and if you got it, show it to me right now.
That's a smart move. Got to give an example. If you're going to say that you are privileged over this person right now, you are going to have to provide an example.
I think the obvious error this student makes is falling into Vince Ellison's trap when he asks her what privilege she has over him. It's a silly question, and don't worry, I'll explain why. But she takes the bait and says that she specifically has privilege over Mr. Ellison. When we talk about topics like white privilege or systemic racism, we're not talking about individual comparisons, right? Of course, when you do that, you have people rightly pointing out, hey, I'm white and poor and obviously don't have privilege over someone like LeBron James or Oprah if we're talking in purely economic terms. But that's dumb, right? It's like when conservatives say that black people owned slaves in the antebellum South. Yes, that's true, but that was the exception, not the rule. Slavery was still an extremely racist institution that was not magically made non-racist because some black slave owners had more wealth than someone from the white working class. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think a black person ever owned a white slave.
My parents had generational wealth.
You, what's your privilege over me?
Exactly.
Well, you tell me.
Let her speak.
We listen to you the whole time.
Yeah, let her speak. Come on.
Shut up, boy. She speaks.
I don't know who this guy is, but he's good.
My parents were able to own a house prior to 1960. Their parents were able to own a banking account.
First of all, we are talking about today. You just said you were privileged today, not in 1960. Obviously, there's going to be differences throughout history. We're talking about today. So tell me something that you are privileged to be able to do that this guy cannot do today, not 1960.
Well, it seems that Warren has difficulty understanding that past privilege and discrimination can have real impact on people today, on average, depending on which racial group they are members of. One obvious example is segregation, right? Segregation is illegal today, but it's not like it disappeared after it was outlawed. In fact, it still exists today and is worse than it was a couple decades ago. And the effects of segregation on black and brown people is pretty substantial, right? And if your family wasn't affected by all the disadvantages of segregation, I would say that's an element of white privilege. I think it would be helpful here to actually define our terms, something Warren doesn't like to trouble his brilliant mind with. So, what in the actual fuck is white privilege? Well, it's really simple. White people on a systemic level are not subject to racism, and in a lot of cases benefit from the fact that they're white. If you're offended by that reality, then you're just a snowflake. Now, white privilege does not mean white people do not struggle. Obviously, they do. It doesn't even mean that whatever success a white person achieves is only attributable to their race. It just means that white people have dominated the wider political, economic, and cultural landscape of American life for a very long time, since the beginning, in fact, and as such have an easier time navigating those landscapes.
They were able to go directly to a bank. They were able to own a house.
Still talking about 1960, going to the bank, you can go to the bank, you can own a house.
They were able to get a job.
You can get a job.
Yeah, it's that easy, apparently. Based on Warren's level of intelligence, I think what he means by you can go to the bank is that you can literally walk into a bank, which is true. I have to give him that. But what's funny here is that Warren is demonstrating the very concept of white privilege. He thinks that it's easy for non-white people to just do these things. But let's actually dig a little deeper on each of those things that were mentioned. When it comes to banking, black and brown people still have to deal with some bullshit. A study out of Brigham Young University, known for being a bunch of leftists, found that black entrepreneurs were offered inferior loan products even when their credit scores and financial profiles were stronger than their white counterparts. When applying for small business loans as sole proprietors, blacks were denied loans at a much higher rate than white applicants. Alright, what about housing? Well, I already mentioned segregation and the horrible downstream effects it can have, including on wealth accumulation. For every $100 of wealth white families have, black families have only $15. Why is that? Oh, I forgot. That's because black people invented rap, and not because of centuries of systemic racism. When black families have significantly less wealth, it would probably make it harder for them to purchase a home or help their children with a down payment. Alright, well, what about getting a job? It's so easy. Well, researchers discovered that when they submitted fake resumes with so-called black and white sounding names with identical qualifications, Those with black names received fewer callbacks. Okay, but this study was probably from some Marxist university, right? What institution are these so-called researchers from? Oh, look at that. The University of Chicago. Isn't that the alma mater of Warren's favorite economist, Milton Friedman? Oh, fuck. Okay, yes, black and brown people are allowed to go to the bank and buy a home and get a job, but that's not the argument, right? The claim is that these things are much harder to do for some minority groups because of past and present discrimination. Warren saying, oh, you can just do all those things, quit bitching, is a straw man, which is all he is capable of arguing against. Okay, what else you got?
All of that wealth accumulated through the generations onto my generation. So that is why I was able to...
Accumulated through the generation. Okay, most generational wealth disappears within 2 generations because people are stupid. And when you raise privileged kids, they are going to become weak, and then they're probably going to lose that wealth. And so it's the generation that is able to carve out that wealth is because they're coming from adversity. It's like the saying of good times create weak men create bad times create hard men, and hard men create good times, and that's the cycle, and just keeps going and going.
What the fuck is he talking about here? Only people who come from adversity are able to carve out wealth? What? Can you point me to a study that says that? Then he repeats the good times, bad times meme with such authority, it's actually pretty fucking hilarious.
So that is why I was able to... Yes!
You crazy. You're insane. Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow. So okay, her voice is shaking. She's not winning logically, so she's feeling it, and she's probably going to go emotional because that's just how these cookies crumble.
Are you fucking serious? She's the one getting emotional? Yeah, but Vince is not getting emotional and resorting to name calling. He's the one making a solid argument with only facts and logic. Well, guys, I think I've had enough, and I know you probably want more, but I just can't take any more of Warren's baby-brained analysis. What do you guys think? Is Warren a true genius and I'm just totally missing it? Leave a comment below, like and subscribe, because if you don't, you're a racist.